Thank you, everybody, for coming to the College Football Betting with Aaron Torres YouTube channel. If you could do me a quick favor, see that little subscribe button at the bottom of the screen. Go ahead, click that subscribe button. It helps our channel grow. It helps our audience grow. I appreciate it more than you know as we're talking college football on this channel year-round. Appreciate your support. Click that subscribe button. College football betting preseason content is rolling out. We have already done Bama. We have already done Georgia. Today, it's the Texas Longhorns. Now, I always give this caveat off the top. These are kind of evergreen previews. We're recording Texas actually in the midst of SEC media days. So if something changes, if you're listening in August, if you're listening in late July, stuff is subject to change. This is how Texas looks as of July 16th, 2025, a day after Steve Sarkisian, Arch Manning, and others appeared at SEC media days. But let's go ahead and talk Texas football going into this year. Listen, I think to contextualize this season, we do have to talk a little bit about last year, and I got to give credit where it's due, right? I was one of those people at this time last year that sat there and said, you know, it's great that you won the Big 12 in your final year. It's awesome that, you think things are going in the right direction. Let's see what happens when you step into the SEC on a week-to-week basis. Turns out they were just fine, right? Because they opened the season very early. They go to Michigan. And I think that was the moment where it's like, okay, Michigan, yeah, they lost a bunch off of what was then the defending champion, but it's still Michigan. It's still in the big house. And Texas just smacked them and didn't look back. It wasn't even close. It wasn't even competitive. And it turned out as time went on, Michigan wasn't a terrible team, even if they maybe weren't very good at the time. Texas just absolutely embarrassed them, certainly in a way that Ohio State didn't later and that Alabama didn't later in the year. You continue on in the season. Listen, early in the year, Quinn Ewers has an injury. Arch Manning comes in. But to their credit, injuries, whatever, Texas rolled to that 6-0 start. Now, they did lose that first game of the year against Georgia, but to their credit, bounced back. Second half of the year, they win at Arkansas. Steve Sarkisian is very public about what that rivalry means to both fan bases, and he's not afraid to admit Arkansas punched us in the mouth my first year there, so they get that win. They beat Florida at home. They beat Kentucky at home. They beat Texas A&M on the road. Get to that SEC championship game. They do not win, but it doesn't change the fact that, again, you played for an SEC title in year one. You go to the college football playoff. You beat Clemson. You beat Arizona State. I think the other thing, too, that we got to give Sark for is that by the end of last year, it was clear that in some places, specifically at quarterback, they were a little bit limited and that he did not trust the guy. I don't think. I thought he kind of coached around Quinn Ewers late in the year. So we got to give Sark credit. Relied on that defense, relied on the run game with Quintravian Wisner, and still managed to get them to that semifinal, whereas we all know, play on the goal line swings everything. Otherwise, it might have been Texas playing Notre Dame for a national championship. As we look ahead to this year, listen, I don't think I need to tell you that as we start talking this team and specifically the offense, I think it all starts with a little guy by the name of Arch Manning. Maybe you've heard of him. I'll say this. It's funny. SEC Media Days, again, going on as we're recording this. I was watching the Texas coverage. It was about a day before we're recording this. And I only bring it up because even Paul Feinbaum admitted, he's like, dude, I've been doing this a long time. He said, I don't ever remember a player who hasn't played significant snaps with as much hype as Arch Manning. He mentioned Johnny Manziel after the Heisman, Tim Tebow after the Heisman, but Arch Manning coming in with as much hype as pretty much anybody probably in the history of college football that has never started. I don't want to say he's never started a game because he has, but obviously only started those two games last year against UL Monroe, against Mississippi State. And I will say, I think it will be interesting to see how he adjusts to being the guy every single week, every single game. Thought he played well in those two starts. Wasn't great against UL Monroe, 258 yards, 2 touchdowns on right around 50% completion percentage, but was much better the next week against Mississippi State. And now, he's kind of the guy. I think what's interesting is this with Arch, is that I think there's two ways to kind of look at Arch. It's something we've already talked about on the Aaron Torres pod. If you are an NFL fan that's going to tune in to watch Texas throughout the season, then yes, you're going to tune in and you're hoping to see the next great Manning, the next potential number 1 overall pick, the next great quarterback prospect. if you're a college football fan, though, I think you realize Arch has an awful lot of talent around him and certainly doesn't need to do it alone. First of all, Quatravian Wisner, I just mentioned him. Third team All SEC last year, over 1,000 yards rushing. When Jaden Blue got hurt, he kind of got the ball and it was kind of like, okay, it's go time. You got to make plays. He was not only phenomenal as a running back, but out of the backfield as well. 44 catches, 311 yards. And then the wide receiver room, I think, to me is really interesting because you lose Matthew Golden. You lose on top of that Isaiah Bond. But as you can see on the screen there, Ryan Wingo, former 5-star. Yeah, that guy's pretty good. Very successful first season, 29 catches, 470 yards, 16 yards per reception. DeAndre Moore is back as well. And I thought a pretty savvy move out of the portal late in the spring. This is one Steve Sarkisian has raved about, Emmett Mosley comes in from Stanford. If you remember Stanford, they fired their coach in February or March. I want to say it was maybe even January, February, whatever. Frank Reich came in to take over. Andrew Luck is the GM there. But Emmett Mosley leaves out of Stanford. He comes to Texas after a freshman year where he had 48 catches, 525 yards, 6 TDs. And so just adds depth to that group. The O-line will be interesting because the O-line loses 4 starters, but the counter to that, they've recruited really well. Brandon Baker, 5-star out of Mater Dei, not far from where I live here in California, will likely take over at left tackle. DJ Campbell is back. All right, let's get to the defensive side of the ball. And one thing I'll say about this, and we're going to talk about this a little bit with the Tennessee preview here in the next couple days. We think of Sark as this, offensive savant. It was the defense that carried Texas throughout last year, especially late in the year, where, again, I really kind of felt like Sark sort of kind of had to coach around Quinn Ewers. Texas finishes, how about this, 3rd nationally in points per game allowed, 15.3 scoring defense. 283 yards allowed, 3rd nationally, a top 10 pass defense. That secondary was a weakness the year before. Remember when Michael Penix torched them in the college football playoff? Fast forward, probably the best secondary in maybe all of college football, or top 10 nationally, all of that. Now, it is worth noting they did lose a couple guys off of that secondary and off of this defense. Alfred Collins along the defensive front. Andrew Makuba, Jade Barron, of course, was not Bolitnikov. He was the Thorpe Award, I think, for the best defensive back. So anyway, bring it up. They lost a lot. They also have a lot coming back, okay? First of all, you see it on the screen here. Let me ask a question. Colin Simmons, can we call him a potential breakout star in college football? Or is he just a freaking star after a true freshman year, 14 and a half TFLs, 9 sacks, national freshman of the year, freshman All-American, obviously All-SEC freshman team. Listen, we don't do a ton of NFL draft stuff on this show, but the NFL people that I know are like, yeah, that dude might have been a 1st-round pick if he was eligible last year after his freshman year. Also up front, Trey Moore transferred in. He's kind of a hybrid linebacker, edge guy. 9.5 TFLs, 5.5 sacks, 36 total tackles, and 3 forced fumbles. We'll see if he can improve on those numbers. And then the big guy in the middle, Anthony Hill. I remember talking about this kid when he was in high school. Remember, he was originally committed to Jimbo Fisher and A&M. I think it's pretty safe to say things worked out well for both him and Texas. As a true sophomore last year, 113 tackles, 16 and a half TFLs, 8 sacks. I don't think it's hyperbole to say Anthony Hill might be the best football player in all of college football. He kind of leads the linebacker core. A couple other guys are back. And then in the secondary, a lot of talent as well. Jalen Gilbo, 58 tackles, 5.5 TFLs. You also have, on top of that, Michael Toffee, the guy, 78 tackles, 5.5 TFLs. By the way, I think I said Jalen Gilbo in the secondary. He's kind of a hybrid linebacker guy as well. Bottom line, talent all across the board. And yes, they lost a ton. I don't know if they're going to have a top 5 scoring defense and total defense. They're going to be really freaking good, though. With that said, let's get to the schedule because I do think this sets up for something very interesting this coming season. Last year with Texas, listen, 2 things can be true. We can give them a ton of credit for stepping into the SEC and being great in year 1 playing for an SEC title. What we also can't deny, schedule was pretty freaking easy. Okay. I've made this argument a million times. I understand there's different metrics for different things, but by the end of the year, after Texas beats Texas A&M, Texas A&M in true A&M fashion loses its last 3 regular season games to go 8-4. Texas didn't beat a single team that was in the final AP top 25 to end the regular season, to end going into the college football playoff. So they didn't play a lot of really good teams. The one great team that they played, Georgia, they lost to twice. And I will say the schedule isn't significantly tougher this year. It is still tougher, though. Look at this schedule. So they open the big one at Ohio State. Now, listen, I think even Ohio State fans would not only admit, but would frustratingly acknowledge that is a noon kickoff. So it is a little bit of a benefit for Texas. Ohio State, of course, is breaking in its own new quarterback, but it's still on the road. It's still in the horseshoe. It's still 100,000 people. It's still maybe the most anticipated game in the regular season. Schedule does get soft from there. You play San Jose State, UTEP, and Sam Houston at home. And then I do want you to take a quick look at how the SEC schedule starts. Okay, so 8 straight SEC games to end the regular season. You do get a bye leading into SEC play, but this is where it gets interesting. 8 straight SEC games to end the regular season. So there's no, Monroe or FCS team late in the year to kind of back end that schedule like so many teams have. But look at this. At Florida, then you play Oklahoma on a neutral, then at Kentucky, at Mississippi State, leading into Vandy the first week of November. Why is that at least interesting to me? I'm not saying that Kentucky or Mississippi State are great teams, but 4 straight games in October away from Darrell Royal Stadium, away from Austin. I think I said 4 straight road games, but 4 straight games away from home, 3 true road games, 1 neutral site game. And if you look at the schedule overall, first 8 games, August, September, and October, 0 games against Power 5 teams at home. You have 5 power, I keep saying Power 5. It's Power 4. We all get it, whatever. But the Power 4 of your first 5 games against Power 4 opponents, all 5 are away from home, 1 on a neutral, 4 on the road. You do close with Vandy. You get a little bit of a break at Georgia, is coming off of a bye. You close with those 2 rivals, Arkansas at home, Texas A&M at home. But I do think it's kind of interesting. You get some benefits and some drawbacks, some pluses and some minuses with this schedule. You get Ohio State on the road, but they're breaking in a new quarterback. You get both Florida and Georgia off of byes. But I think it's kind of worth noting that the schedule, to me, seems to play out much tougher than it did a year ago. And so when I look at the over-under for this team, one thing does stand out as far as where that is. By the way, it is also worth noting that Georgia does not get a bye before that Texas game. I think that's pretty significant as far as the schedule is concerned. All right, let's get to the over-under win total. This is from DraftKings Sportsbook. Over-under is 9.5. Money is coming in on the over. This is one I just don't feel great on either side. Okay. And by the way, I think some Texas fans are going to watch it and get it. I think some Texas fans are, Torres just criticizing Texas like all these media guys. Here's what I would say to that. I said this to lead the show. We're done with the is Texas back? Like, it's so lame. It's so corny. Sark has been awesome. He's built an incredible team. I would argue top to bottom, the best roster in college football. But for them to hit that over 9.5, which would be 10-2, 11-1, or 12-0, here's the reality. I think you could say probably the 3 toughest teams on their schedule are all teams that they have to play on the road. They have to play at Ohio State in week 1. They have to play at Florida later on in the season. Florida will be coming off of a bye, unlike Georgia. And they have to play at Georgia late in the year. And so for them to hit that over of 9.5, that means they're either going to have to win at the horseshoe, between the hedges, or in the swamp. Even if Florida maybe is whatever. That's a tough ask. Georgia, you lost to twice. And Ohio State, according to Vegas, you're an underdog going into that game. And so I just sit there and say, I can like the personnel. but you're going to have to go into one of those venues and win. And that's assuming nothing else crazy happens, that you don't lose to A&M, that something weird doesn't happen against Oklahoma in Dallas. Obviously, we all think Oklahoma is going to be a much improved team. So I like Texas. I like the personnel. I have maybe a few more questions about Arch, but it's not even about Arch. It's just that the schedule gets much tougher. I think a lot of those kind of middle tier teams should be better, most specifically Oklahoma and Florida. And like I said, you're going to have to go on the road and win at Florida, at Georgia, or at Ohio State. This is a stay away to me. I will say, I think barring something stunning, the worst case scenario is 9-3. I just don't know that I love this team enough to confidently say they're going to go 10-2. So this ultimately feels like a stay away to me. All right, I do think we're going to get out of here on this episode of College Football Betting. Listen, if you're not subscribed to the show, please make sure to do so. Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast, make sure to do so. Leave a 5-star rating and review. We would appreciate your support. If you're watching on YouTube, click that subscribe button. We need to hit 1,000 subscribers before the start of college football season. We really would appreciate your support. All right, that's all for today's episode. We will be back here in the next couple days, and we're talking Texas's biggest rival, Oklahoma. We'll discuss next. Well, I don't know if they're the biggest rival. Some schools would say otherwise, but Oklahoma, I would argue, more change across the board, player, coaching staff, front office, GM role than any team in college football. A lot on the line for Brent Venables in year 4. Oklahoma. Next episode. Appreciate your support of the College Football Betting Podcast.